Welcome to the Tokenomics DAO podcast, where we explore everything tokenomics related, ranging from deep dives on the tokenomics of the newest protocol to demystifying the nuance of building a successful token ecosystem. Our goal is to bring awareness to the importance of tokenomics and the crucial role it plays in defining the success of a protocol, helping make tokenomics relevant for everyone, builders and investors alike. I'm your host, Flo, joined by my co-hosts, Jason and or Lovis. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi everyone. Episode 22 of the Tokenomics DAO podcast, and we have a very special guest, Aleksa Mil. Did I pronounce that right? I hope.
Yes, you did.
She's the founder of Waceo, which is also a DAO, and she lives in Belgrade. I'm currently in Leipzig in Germany, and Flo is in Sydney. And we connected last week, and I just thought after speaking to Aleksa that it would be really great to get her on the show and she could share a bit of what she's doing. I think it's super valuable work. And that we can all learn a little bit more about the space that she's in. She does a lot of work in compliance, at the same time trying to make sure that all the DAOs can stay as decentralized as possible. So hope you guys enjoy the show. Welcome, Aleksa.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So tell us a bit about yourself, how you got into the space, and then maybe also about your project that you're working on.
Sure. So when I finished law, I was like, well, I cannot actually, stay in office and work from office, 9-to-5 jobs. So I started looking into working online, and actually from there on, I built my career in tech startups, in operational roles, and the last one was a fintech. And when I was looking for a change, I kind of literally accidentally got into DAO. So my Web3 journey actually started into a DAO, where I aided building up operations and the governance. And that was my first contact with DAOs, with the decentralized industry as a whole. And I was like, okay, well, this is a place for me to be and stay. And from there on, I worked a lot on upskilling myself on DAOs, understanding the industry, the legal and compliance side, and the regulatory challenges the industry generally facing. And soon enough, I also joined Waceo. Initially, I joined as a head of ops, and where I helped build up the internal governance. And a few months later, I took on the managing role. Waceo is a DAO-focused nonprofit that provides blockchain-based projects with framework for compliance, legality, risk management, and prevention. We're an environment in which blockchain-based projects can interact with traditional world service providers in a centralized manner, compliantly, while maintaining a significant level of decentralization. We do that by providing projects with legal representation, meaning that when it comes to interaction with traditional world, we act as a legal proxy of the projects, where we ensure that with that way, the projects are able to receive services, interact compliantly while staying decentralized. We also help projects by doing legal and business assessments, where we understand what are the potential risks associated with the projects, and based on that, give recommendation on best practices, how to mitigate those risks. So
sounds like, whoa, man, when I hear that, right, I feel like it's super important what you're doing, but how do you stay on top of all the different jurisdictions, right? I'm not a lawyer at all, right? But I just can only imagine if there's a DAO that's, I don't know, where is it? First of all, like, where is it based, and what's
And
your
where do you even learn
expertise
that?
say?
Right? Where do you even get the
Yeah.
expertise for this?
Yeah, so I mean, we as a team, we stay on top of regulations and what's happening, right? Like, I mean, on a daily basis, I literally follow what's happening in which country around the world when it comes to crypto regulations, what are the changes, what the updates are, etc. Right? But what we do at Waceo is like we have that traditional law expertise, but we're all people who moved to Web3, like, you know, some time ago. And we do like that high level assessment when you understand where we understand like what are the issues of the decentralized environment and how traditional law sees it. And based on that, for example, we give recommendation on which jurisdiction to incorporate in. But then, we actually work with local service providers, right? So either like law offices, tax offices, whatever, right? Like in order to incorporate the project, right? And they also they do their own internal assessment of the project before they move forward with the jurisdiction, with the incorporation. So basically, and we work with them because not many service providers actually understand what the projects are about, right? So you have to educate them on the project, right? Like on how the community works, on how decentralized organization works. And in that sense, it's a collaborative work, right? So we don't need to know like, you know, each and every, you know, regulation of every jurisdiction in the world, right? So what we do is we find providers that are capable of catering to the needs of the DAO.
So I'm just assuming here, but does that mean you have like in a few key jurisdictions, you've got partners in those areas that you've worked with before, and they kind of keep you abreast of changes, and you liaise with both sides, like with the DAO as well as the, let's say, the traditional legal framework.
Yeah, I mean, like
legal teams.
When we have a partner that we're already working with, like on a certain project, of course, like, and there is like that like feedback loop, right? Like in that relationship, right? Where we update each other if there are any changes. However, on a more general level, right? It's a more, to be honest, like a personal education on what's happening in the field, because after all, that's our niche. That's what we do.
So then if I came to you, then let's go through this maybe with an example, right? And I said,
sure.
I had this great DAO called the Tokenomics DAO, and I wanted to incorporate it.
I've heard about like great things about it.
So sorry about that. Yeah. So like how would you decide where to incorporate it? What would you need to know from me? What are like the things that you go through to decide what jurisdiction will be best? Do you also look into potential tokens, and maybe we'll get to the security side of that later? But yeah, what are kind of the things by which you would decide where this would happen?
So basically what we would do, we would ask you to share with us all the documents you have about the project, right? So white paper, light paper, decks, like basically any documents you have that would help us understand the project in depth. Right, so then we will look at your website, we will look at your community governance pages, and based on that, do an assessment, right? So where we would understand, for example, how centralized or decentralized you are, whether you have some, we had cases where they were missing, like the DAO was missing like some just basic like website policies, right? Or like, well, what is the communication with the community, like what policies you have or you don't have or you might be missing, or we will build out some policies that we see that you should have, right? So then we will look at the token and understand whether the token can be regarded as a utility or a security. And in that sense, like we could also potentially advise what you could do in order to add certain utilities to the token, again, to move away from that being regarded as a securities risk. Then And we would look where your team is at, right? Like where is the majority of your community, of your investors, right? So we would take like a really like, look at everything that you have, like both internally and publicly, assess that and build out a report that would outline all the potential risks. So for example, if we see that sorry, if that there is a lack of transparency towards the community, that is something that we would outline. If if we see that the project is centralized, then we would also outline that and help you build out like a decentralized governance roadmap, right? For example, in terms of like the voting mechanism, right? So we would also assess the proposals that you had posted for your community. So we would outline that, and you will receive like a very long report, right? And but before you would get that report, like we would have like work sessions with you, like with the team, right? Like in whole AMAs with the community, of course. And it's a very collaborative process and work. And later on, when you get that report, we would present that to you, have you like answer any questions you may have, and then schedule a follow-up call when you had some time to go through that report and then decide the next steps. For example, depending on the project, right? So what the project is about, what the project wants to accomplish, what are your short-term, long-term, mid-term goals. So all based on that, we assess which jurisdiction is the best applicable, right? So currently, you don't have many jurisdictions that are crypto friendly and the most favorable. So the list is not long, right? So
can you give us some
who's at the top?
Some who's like a top 5, top 3?
Oh, like to be honest, like that's a question I really dislike.
Come on.
Because like, the first thing that when we get
okay, not China, right?
I mean, it's like, it really depends, right? So like Dubai is right, like the hub, right? Like zero tax, like, zero tax, at least for now, right? And like it's so many businesses are getting incorporated there. And then, for example, Cyprus, we had a project that got incorporated today as a crypto fund, right? So then, for example, Swiss Foundation is quite popular to get incorporated as a DAO there, since they're actually quite crypto friendly and quite crypto progressive. Then, like for example, the Cayman Islands are quite popular, but the problem is they get like blacklisted quite often, so they might not be the best option to go.
But why?
Then, because they don't have like really strict AML requirements. So like they keep, being like I think like they were with like second or third time on blacklist, because like the AML requirements are just low, right? And it doesn't sit well with the US and the EU. Like, so they kind of like, put them there, then they do something there, they move them, they're put back on. So then the British Virgin Islands are quite popular to get incorporated there. Then of course, like now the states such as Wyoming and the Marshall Islands, right? Because they're recognized as legal entities. And then I heard many projects are actually not getting incorporated in Panama because they recognize DAOs. But I'm not sure how crypto friendly they are, to be honest. In that, I mean, they made Bitcoin like legal tender and legalized DAOs, but I'm just concerned, like, how because you also have to look at international laws, right? Because if you're a project that wants to go into work globally, right? So you have to look at international laws of the country and how they actually agree with other countries and whether they have restrictions in doing certain business. So What else? I mean, I think like those are like the main jurisdictions where people look into to incorporate their DAOs in. So,
I'm a bit
but
biased, but
I'm not recommending any, like, like
yeah,
a
yeah.
huge disclaimer, this
I
is not a
understand.
legal advice.
Generally for this podcast, right? This is no legal advice.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just trying to find
Regardless
out
who we have on.
yeah, but I'm Singaporean, and Flo's
Mhm.
lived in Singapore. That's where we met actually. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on Singapore as a jurisdiction.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also quite popular to get incorporated, but like what I'm hearing is actually like there's been pressure like from outside to kind of like make the laws strict. So we'll see how how that will fly, because like I mean, Dubai has super favorable regulations when it comes to crypto and blockchain related businesses. And I'm quite curious how the zero taxes are actually going to play out longer term, because there's like too much money in crypto to tax at zero. So, but like it really depends, right? Like on the project, right? Like in what the project wants to do. We always get that first question, right? Like even in the email or when we get on a call, like, where should I incorporate? Like, I don't know. Like I have to look at your project, see what your project is doing, like what, have like a really, take a deeper dive and understand the project really well. And based on that, give recommendation on the jurisdiction, because there is no one solution fits them all, because you have to think long term. You have to think like what the international laws of the country, what the restrictions are, how that country is actually looking at crypto, right? So there are countries that now have a few regulations, but you can actually like see online what those countries doing in terms of crypto, right? So are they looking to be more strict, right? Are they looking to build crypto friendly regulations, right? So you have to take that into consideration as well before moving forward with the incorporation and giving recommendation on that. For example, like Malta, right? So Malta was a super favorable country for exchanges, right? But now it's really difficult to get the license there. So it really depends on, you have to have like a good look and understand everything, and then so I wouldn't really know when they're saying whether Singapore, is is good or bad. It's good for some project, but not really good for some others.
And so, like again, back to that DAO, right? So when a DAO comes to you, what will be the main driver for making that decision? Would it be who they do business with? And since we're like decentralized, right, why would we need to incorporate it all? Right?
Yeah.
Can you maybe walk through that?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, that is like a huge DAO trap, right? So DAOs are, right, so we can say really that they are not seen as legal entities generally worldwide. So when you don't have something defined by the law, right? So you look at something that is closest to it. And in the DAO case, that's a general partnership. General partnership is a business arrangement between two or more people that equally share profits, losses, and all liabilities. Meaning that everyone involved is responsible. It has unlimited liabilities with their personal assets. For example, if DAO commits an illicit activities, everyone in that DAO can be liable with their personal assets. If DAO activities fall under regulated activities but does not have necessary licenses or has not gone through the process, it's like the members of the DAO can be liable, right? Like can be accused of taking part in those criminal activities, right? Like if nothing else, just the tax issues. So the reason why many, which is actually, in my honest opinion, a good move, incorporate DAO, because it helps you remove those liabilities from individuals, right? So you remove liabilities from the from the developers, you remove liabilities from your community members, from your investors, right? And I do believe that the project founders are the ones responsible that need to take necessary steps in order to protect the project as much as possible, right? As you need to take all measures that you can in order to protect like the technical side of the project, right? So someone cannot steal your funds. In the same way, you need to protect it legally so you and your community are not liable. On the other side, like the DAOs are generally incorporated in as LLCs, right? So what happened there is like when you do that, then the like who's like where are the assets now? Who is the owner of the assets? Right. So in that case, actually the incorporated entity becomes the owner of the assets, and the CEO of that entity actually becomes the owner. And in that sense, the DAO members lose ownership of their assets, and they cannot get registered as shareholders because in that sense, they would be those would be seen as securities. So it's quite difficult sometimes to balance, right? And you always have to kind of, when you get incorporated, right? I mean, you assume there is a trust like from the community towards the founder and the developers, right? And the developer, like the founders are actually honest about the project and their intentions. So you kind of do that on that trust basis. But and that is it's always tricky, right, to give appropriate answer whether you should not or you should incorporate your DAO. You should, because the longer term consequences can be quite serious, right? Like in terms of tax, right? So you don't want to play with taxes, right? Like in terms of potential legal liabilities, you need to be protected, right? Because you can never know, like, are there any bad actors within your DAO, right? Like even within the team that is helping the operations of the DAO and like being like the DAO representatives, the ones holding the keys to the funds. So in that sense, we do recommend incorporation as a way to mitigate those risks.
But how would that help if the funds were held like in a multi-sig that the corporation doesn't really have access to, right? Because it would still be among individuals.
Yeah, that is true, right? But like the problem is like, you know, what is the legal contract that you have with those people, right? So that like those are the things that I think like many are just not aware of, that you really have to look into those details. And even if you have an entity, right? So if you start operating, if you start acting as a centralized entity, you cannot be seen as a DAO anymore. So the entity should be there to limit those liabilities. But the question is, should you use that entity to sign contracts, do payments, et cetera, because if you do so, you're not a decentralized project anymore. You're a blockchain related business that has a community on chain, but you're not a decentralized organization anymore. So what also needs to happen is that even though you have an entity fund, you have it, right? So you have it there for protection, but you shouldn't use it. I mean, you shouldn't, right? Again, not a legal advice disclaimer, right? Like if you want to keep that decentralization on a higher level, since you still need to act, right? So your actions have to be in the nature of decentralized industry, like in decentralized manner, not of a centralized environment. So I think like those are the many challenges. Like there are many challenges with DAOs, and especially for founders, like to navigate the regulations and the lack of same.
Mm-hmm. Super interesting. Yeah. So how does the token come into play? Like what are the thoughts there? So let's say we've got the DAO thing sorted out. You got the DAO incorporated. Then I assume launching or adding a token, that's like a whole different story, a whole nother thing that you need to go through, right? Because then it's somehow not just an incorporation, but you're also becoming somewhat, not really like a, but somewhat like a publicly traded company, right?
Yeah, I mean, like most of the DAOs have tokens, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, almost all, right? So, and like when we do the assessment, right? So when we think of incorporation, right? Like, so of course we look at the token, and that is something like the, very important element of the project and of our assessment, right? So in that sense, like what matters for the token, what we look at is whether it's a utility token or it can be regarded as a security, right? So if it's regarded as security, right, then that triggers a whole set of different regulations, right? Like, and as you know, SEC in the US is extremely strict when it comes to securities, right? And can be actually quite limiting for US based investors, right? Like, and if we look what's happening with exchanges right now, right? Like many are being accused that they were trading securities, but to
Coinbase,
be
yeah.
honest, yeah, Coinbase and I think like also Binance had the same issue, right? And the problem with security is just like the how test is just not, it's too broad, and basically almost any ICO that has ever been done, existed, or that's going to happen can be regarded as a security, right? So I think like, that is like additional layer of challenges like DAOs need to navigate, and while building their project and while building their tokenomics. And unless they really want to go into securities and they're like, being aware of it, they really need to pay attention, right? Like, and think of additional utilities of the token that can remove them, like move them away further from this being treated as a securities.
Okay, so maybe can you like walk us through that process, right? So you mentioned the Howey test. We've had an episode on that, but can you maybe just walk us through how someone knows whether a token is a security or not?
So, I mean, the Howey test, right? So refers to determining, for example, if a transaction qualifies as like an investment contract, right? And but it's it's tricky because basically everything, I mean, you invest in crypto because you generally expect some return on investment. You expect some type of profit, right? Like if you're starting a project, if you're launching your crypto, of course you expect to earn.
That's for all my investments, basically, right? So
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
invest in anything where I don't expect a profit.
Yeah, so that's why the Howey test is quite tricky, right? Because it looks at whether it's an investment of money, right? So basically investing in crypto is investing money, right? So whether it is done in a common enterprise, right? So for example, that can be seen as the DAO, and do you expect profit? And whether you expect profit that would be derived from efforts of others, right? So of a third party. So basically what happens there is that like when the regulators look at that, right? So they do the Howey test at the cryptocurrencies, right? And understand like probably like, what was how big of the profit was, right? So what was the investment in, and generally, sorry, and generally, what was the return, what the transactions were. And so generally navigating the Howey test and removing like moving the token away is is again like very, very difficult and like to do. But of course, like there are some like there are distinctions, right? So how like, what are the additional utilities of the token, right? So whether is it a governance token as well, whether you're going to use it for the voting, right? So whether you're going to use the token, right, for some sort of like research, like education, then whether the token is used to support other initiatives, like within the project, within the community, right? So those are all some additional utilities that you can have within the token, which is which is reality, and those things can help, actually can again like move away from it being seen as a security. But it's I think that is something, I think like definitely like down the road, how we test is something that will have to be revisited, in a sense that not every crypto is security, but if you have a task that classified as each and every crypto security is not really productive, right? And it's both generally with the coming regulations and everything what's happening, especially in the US, right? So the US is generally going really strong on introducing crypto regulations. So I assume at some point how we test is also will have to be revisited in that sense.
So yeah, crypto is very US focused, right? But have there been like other countries that have, like, in your opinion, have made good progress or good suggestions on how to do this? Like, is there like another country? Yeah.
If you look at, for example, in Europe, right? So many things are happening in Europe in terms of regulations, right? So the UK, right? So regulating stable coins, right? Like EU and MiCA, right? So MiCA, EU was actually the first one to bring some sort of like a unified type of regulations when it comes to crypto. And where else? Sorry, like many other countries that are just having more of an individual approach, right? Because there is no like higher level regulations to follow, at least not. In the EU, like many countries will just have to follow the MiCA regulations, right? Like and adopt it like on the locally. So let me think what other in South America, right? So you have individual countries that they brought their own regulations in terms of Bitcoin, right? The DAOs, digital assets in general. If you look at UK, right? So regulating stable coins, accepting NFTs, and let me think. Yeah, we know Dubai, Korea, Thailand, India, right? So those are all countries that are focusing widely on regulating cryptos.
And more progressively than what the US has with its antiquated Howey test.
To be honest, I'm not sure. I wouldn't comment on that. I would not comment on that.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. So maybe let's now move on to Waceo. Is that do I pronounce that correct?
Yeah, Waceo.
Okay. What does that stand for? Where does that come from?
Actually, it was like a short name to say like the initial intent of Waceo, like how it was founded, right? So Waceo came as a result of the events in 2017 that had a goal to help regulate to aid the regulations and compliance in the market after the events. But then, to be honest, like when we when I joined last year, like we changed the approach, and And it's now just like Waceo, the name state, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have any it doesn't
There are
have
many
any
such
meaning right
examples.
now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So can you maybe walk us through a couple of these aspects, like where you incorporated? How does the DAO function? And then maybe later let's also go into the token. What if you have
Yeah,
one? What role that plays?
and also you say you're a DAO, and then you also say you have a team. So like, how does it work? How do you delineate between your community or like an inner circle of, say, full-time staff? Do you have that? And would you consider the outside legal advisors that you work with, would they be part of the DAO? Like, do they have a dual role, or are they really external? It's just for interest, because it's an interesting model, right? Like, you're really interfacing with the traditional world while being a DAO. So how does that work?
So the interaction with the traditional world happens via the nonprofit. And we're actually in the pre-launch phases of the token, which is legal and compliance reserve currency that aims to be multi-chain accepted payment and provision method for legal compliance, onboarding, and other needs of the DAO. So for like of DAOs in general in the space, blockchain-based projects in general. And in terms of the DAO, right? So we're since we're like in the pre-launch phases, right? So we didn't get to the point of ourselves being a DAO, but generally like the community, I mean the service, I mean general what we do, everything we keep open source, right? Like, and when there is audit that needs to be done on Waceo, that is of course done by by a third party service provider, right? But and generally when it comes to work, right, it's a collaborative environment, and of course like our communities, right, are also law offices or individual legal consultants, and we don't have like, if we're referring to like some sort of like a conflict of interest or something, it's we don't have it because we're a nonprofit, right? So we're rather an association, a connection hub, where the two worlds can meet, and actually where they can collaborate and help grow further, because at the end of the road, that's the goal of what we're doing. So we're not in that DAO stage yet, right? And I think it's to be honest, like I'm really looking forward to building out the Waceo DAO, right? Because it's like needs to be like an extremely decentralized environment, right? And to be also like be a fully compliant and centralized and decentralized environment that will have the role again to give the ability, right, to give the payment ability for DAOs to access traditional world while being decentralized, because after all, the having the Waceo token and having those legal reserves would eliminate the need for fiat or stablecoin funds. And what it also does, it mitigates those risks of being deemed as a centralized entity or taking on personal liabilities, right? Because every interaction with the traditional world, right, requires signing some sort of a contract, right, if you're paying in fiat. So either you sign it as a centralized entity, or for the DAOs that do not have centralized entity, those contracts are signed by individuals. By signing the contract as an individual on behalf of the DAO, you're taking on all liabilities on yourself, which are unlimited, right? So, and again, like having the token eliminates that, because all their interaction is done via Waceo, where we are the ones paying the provider or for the DAO in fiat, but the DAO is actually paying us in our Waceo token. and they can obtain the Waceo token by swapping their native token against ours.
So how does the value of that swap, right? How does it work? So say we've got, if one day we have a token, or when we swap it with you guys, how do we ascertain like how many of our tokens are worth a Waceo token, and how do we know like the Waceo token will hold its value? Say in 2 years' time, I'll need to pay for some legal advice, and I want to use the Waceo token. How does that work?
So you would get like to a shield up page, and where you would input the amount of money you wish to use to buy the Waceo tokens, and you would have
in fiat.
Sorry.
When you say the amount of money, so
yeah, so you would put like how much of your tokens you want to put in, and the calculator would tell you how much of those your tokens you would receive.
Would that come like from some bonding curve or a market mechanism?
Yeah, so I mean it's where like we're pulling the data, right? So it's a live calculation that you can do. And I mean like for your last question, I mean, like I cannot really predict the crypto market in 2 years, right? Like, and what's going to happen, but our goal is to have a diversified set of DAO tokens, and initially we will go for a raise that would actually allow us to have reserves in stable coins, and later on we would do the IDO. With a chain native token. We'll probably do like an IDO on Ethereum, and after the IDO, right? So the goal, as I mentioned, is that to have like a diversified set of tokens, meaning that when the DAO, if you, for example, if you swap your token against ours, you would get, of course, like the appropriate amount of the Waceo token, and we would take your DAO token and add it to the reserves. Like there is no selling pressure on our side from on your DAO token, as the goal for us is to keep it, and having that diversified set of reserves would help us maintain the price. And we have like also the inflationary mechanism in place to keep the price, and the monetary policy in place that helps us hold the token value.
But like, I mean, since your token is not a stable coin, it's going to be more of a volatility driven token, right? So it underlies volatility. So it would have volatility. So if I pay, let's say I want some services from you guys, I'll pay $1,000 for that, and I'll get one token for it. And then if at a later stage, then can I still buy the same service for that one token regardless of what the fiat price of your token does?
Yeah, I guess another way to phrase it, right, for the way I was thinking about it was, are you going to fix your services at a certain Waceo token rate, or will the services rendered always, like maybe today this service would cost 100 tokens, tomorrow maybe 50, the day after maybe 75, depending on the price of the trade, the Waceo token that the Waceo token trades at. Is that how it'll work?
To fiat, yeah.
And so, for example,
to fiat, no.
Yeah, so the fact is that the service providers, right, that would provide services to the DAO, for example, to you, right, as a DAO, they would send invoice in fiat, right? So the price, so the invoice is determined in fiat. So those are not to say like in-house Waceo prices that can that can be determined by the Waceo token, right? So what we do, we enable DAOs to remain decentralized, use their native token for actually basically using their native token for accessing traditional world services, right? But the prices of the service providers is not something that we decide, right? So it's really much dependent on the service provider, on the service itself, and on the jurisdiction.
So you're kind of
Which
this
we're
proxy.
giving- Yeah, exactly. So we are the legal proxy. Mhm.
Flo, so I don't know how you're thinking about it. Me and Flo are like, fighting to like try and ask you questions, but
Go ahead.
yeah, I would think, I don't know, Flo, would you be on the same page as I, right? Like that the dynamic would then be that we would only swap out tokens for Waceo tokens when we need it, right? Because holding on to it for the long term would pose some sort of a volatility risk. Would that be what you're thinking as well? Like, and I don't know how Waceo thinks about that. Like, if in the end, is it fine that people only swap their tokens for Waceo tokens as and when they need your services? Or are you hoping that they would do that and hold Waceo tokens for the long term?
I mean, the idea is to actually form those legal reserves, right? As a way to be in a way insured, right? That, for example, at any time you have the access to legal and compliance support. Because like what would happen, like the moment a DAO swaps goes through a shield up event, right? So what happens is that we automatically become the legal representative of the DAO, meaning that at the same time, the DAO actually gets in-house legal, right? It gets legal protection and it gets legal representation. Where we initial step working with any DAO is doing the debt assessment, because it helps us understand like what are potential risks of the DAO, and then we work out the plan on how to mitigate those risks. Of course, like the DAOs can do the swap at the moment, just at the moment they need it, right? But there is also like, something you also get by being a holder, right? And the fact is that crypto market is volatile by nature, right? So the market changes fast, right? So I think like, but just by even having your own token is a risk on its own, right? Like in investing in anything.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
Crypto is a risk, right? So I wouldn't really single out like, having Waceo token might be risky for you because the market is volatile. I mean, the market is such
the
by
DAO's
nature.
token might be even more volatile than the Waceo one, right? Because the Waceo one would be, I guess from the sound of it, would be definitely more diversified.
Yeah, exactly. That's why is the goal, like to have diversified set of different DAO tokens, right? Because it would help the price, right? And again, like we have mechanisms in place that would actually help preserve the price of the token, because like I mean, our role is to help guide and support, right? And how we build the tokenomics has the same function and has the same role, right? So we would take necessary steps in order to protect the value of the token, because after all, based on that, like depends the value of the legal reserves that DAO has.
And when do you think this shields up, right? When does that go live? When do DAOs, is it live already? Can DAOs take part now, or?
Actually we are like in pre-launch phases now. We are going for a raise, and then we will go for an IDO, and then generally for the community, and but there is like a waiting list now that DAOs can join in.
Any general rough timeline you guys are looking at?
Not really, to be honest. I think like, in a month or something, I would say.
Okay, so relatively soon.
Yeah, I mean, we have everything built out. Like we have white paper, we have tokenomics, we have smart contracts done. Now we're in the final testing phases, and it's like we'll now need to do the audit as well. So we're basically ready to go live.
Super cool. Sorry, Flo, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that you mentioned earlier that I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit, and that was
Sure.
the decentralization, right? So currently, I assume
Mhm.
you're a foundation, right? So you're an employee. There's some sort of CEO in this thing, or maybe not a CEO, but somebody who leads it or manages it. What's that pathway towards decentralization look like?
You mean like sorry, like if you can just clarify in terms of like the CEO for where, for like the Waceo nonprofit or the token?
No, yeah, for the Waceo nonprofit, I assume like that's what
Mhm.
you're working for at the moment. And then earlier, that's how I
Oh,
understood.
right.
You
Yeah,
mentioned
like
that you had this pathway to decentralizing, to becoming like a decentralized DAO at some point.
yeah.
So I'm always interested how that journey looks like, right? Of
Mhm.
one famous example I know of is Shapeshift, and they've really moved or are still on that journey, but they were like this corporation in the US. And then at some point, I think
Mhm.
last year, they said like, okay, we're shutting this thing down. Everybody gets paid out. We're a DAO now, right? And so I think they're still on this
Mhm.
pathway, but they're disassembled their corporation and turned into a DAO. So how are you doing that?
So the nonprofit is a standalone organization, right? And it has its mission statement and its purpose, while the Waceo token is more of a product of of experiences that we have had dealing with DAOs, and many of the challenges that we actually experienced working with DAOs. It was quite common to get a question from DAO, can we pay you in native tokens, right? Because we just don't have money, right? I mean, many DAOs just don't have like, funds in stable coins or fiat. And of course, like, depending on like, due to the maturity and the age of the DAO, it was just not possible to accept those payments, because at the end of the road, we have to pay service providers in fiat money, right? So having the Waceo token in place is actually like giving the tool to the community to get the access to centralized world while staying decentralized. And generally, as any project, right? Like, yeah, correct. Like the token project is quite like centralized at this point, like when me and a few other team members. But as we go, right, and as the community grows, like decentralization will happen, that like the generally like the of course like the voting power, the making decisions, right? Because the making decisions and generally the whole structure of the organization will be built in a sense that it's a decentralized type of environment where the community of DAOs is actually the one making decisions that are related to the project, to what we're doing, and to the support we're giving to the environment. And also the decentralized framework, right, will also entail like I mean the community role, right, the decisions that are to be made, like the policies that are going to put in place. Like, don't forget, like we'll have also like a community of lawyers and like general like legal and other experts that will have their say in working on stuff that are probably related to regulations, right? Because our goal is not only, okay, so these are the best practices, right? So this is how we can help you be compliant according to that. I mean, our goal is also to aid, right, to get involved in educating in terms of regulations, and also working with the regulators in terms of bringing the regulations to the environment. The fact is that the compliance is something like legal and compliance side of the industry is going to happen, right? So it's facts, right? But the question is whether how favorable those regulations are going to be. And I believe it's on the DeFi community as a whole is to actually the one to educate and work and collaborate when it comes to bringing those regulations. Since yeah, after all, we're going to be the ones that have to follow those
Yeah.
those laws, right? So at this point, like the project, is at its very early stages to understand the community and the path the DAO is going to take, especially since that is something that will be decided mostly by the community, not by myself and a few other people, right? So I might be able to give you a better answer to these questions, like in 6 months from now or something, when we have launched and
guess it's a tough
have
journey,
community.
and you don't know how it's going to evolve.
Yeah, I mean, every DAO is different, right? Like we're in a very specific niche, right? And we have very specific purpose, and that's legal and compliance to support, and in the nonprofit, right? So that I lead, right? So we have very clear goal, we have a cause, and that is something that it does operate as a centralized entity for the fact that it is, and it was established as a centralized entity, so it can do what it does, while the DAO is to say like an on-chain extension of what we do, and it's there to to build the community around what we do.
Yeah, exactly. Have that community extension to the foundation that you have already, right? Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. Have we missed anything that you kind of want to mention that we haven't touched upon that Waceo does, or that you guys are excited about?
Well, I mean, I'm personally excited about like a small project that we are working on. It is around more bridging the gender gap in the environment. So we are launching a program, like a project that aims to bring more women to Web3 by educating them on the environment, with a focus on female legal professionals across the globe. Because there are not many, to say like Web3 focused lawyers, and I think like around 99% of them are actually men. And our goal.
Why do you think that's the case?
Like, honestly, I would love to know. Generally
99% is massive. It must be something,
either
either something really pulling the guys a lot stronger, or something really blocking the girls a lot stronger, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very fair question, right? Like, if you look at the crypto blockchain landscape, when it comes to female involvement, you have around 4.13 female crypto founders, right? Around 16% investors, and around like less than 5% of female artists are involved in NFT sales, for example. So the percentage is very low. And I think like in this year, only 2% of female founders in Web3 space actually received VC funding. And so the numbers are extremely low, despite the hyper growth industry in the past 2 years. And generally, I think that there is a huge gap. Like, if you look at the tech industry as a whole, right? So there is a gap when it comes to like women and men involvement, right? And when you kind of like narrow it down to blockchain, right? So the numbers get even smaller. Then you go to legal tech, right? Then the numbers get even smaller. And when you go to even like niche, Web3 lawyers, right? So exactly right. It's a very specific niche, right? Like, and the general number is quite low. And when you look at the gender difference is just, I think it's around like 1% or even less. Why that happens is like in the tech industry, blockchain industry, there are several factors that actually do affect like whether women are involved or not, and that is generally like either the retention gap, the workplace culture, right? So I'm talking like on a high level, like in tech companies, then generally like the education difference, right? Like between women and men, and when you move to blockchain, right, what is usually happening is that women get less exposure to Web3. And because then if you look at banking, finance, right, so those are more or less male dominated industries, right, combined with the tech. In a sense, it comes as logical that the female representation is really low. What also happens is facts there is a gender discrimination towards women, and I know many don't see it as existing, but it's a fact, right? So I mean, I was at the panel at the conference, and the guy, from the audience, stood up and asked, but I don't understand, what values can a woman bring, right? And I'm like,
No way. Really? Somebody said
like,
that? Crazy.
yeah, I mean, it's on tape, right? And I'm like,
yeah.
Did
you just ask that?
yeah, I literally did that, right? And then I mean, it happened to me, and I mean, it happened, for example, to a friend of mine, right? She's in product, Feel Deep, and she was told, well, you're not a fat white man, right? What the hell are you doing here? And stuff like that, right? And those things happen, and they happen more than often. My friend, another friend, she's a developer, right? And she was so okay, well, I think you just come to interviews, right? All developers are going to want to have coffee with you if they don't, they're gays. Right? And you cannot hear something like that towards men, right? Come and look hot, I'm sure we're gonna get that LinkedIn. So
no, I think the reason we have so much success is because Flo looks so good on camera, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's a filter. It's a filter. It's really simple.
So,
no, but it's a really interesting topic, because I was super surprised, right, when I looked on your website that you had a lady there that I can't remember, sorry, but it was to do with women in Web3 or something. And I was thinking, oh, for such a new industry where everybody's just trying to build, I would be surprised, right, that there would already be obstacles in place, so
yeah, unfortunately there are. I mean, if you just look at the existing stats, right, it's just kind of sad how many the lack of women involved. Again, it has to do a lot with the access to the information. It has to do a lot with the education in general. And it depends also a lot on how people are brought up, right? And those are of course all the important factors among many others. So our goal is to actually offer free education to women around on Web3, from the very basics, and then to move into more into our niche, which are legal regulations and compliance, and with that also educate more lawyers on the environment, because that is something that is definitely going to be needed, since there are not many legal experts that understand the environment quite well. Of course, you have many amazing lawyers that do know that, SEC requirements, right, crypto regulations and stuff. But the question is, how well do they understand the decentralized industry? How well do they understand how DAOs work? How Web3 community works? Yeah, exactly. So our goal is to kind of to educate, you have to bring in legal professionals and really educate them on the environment and the decentralized industry from the inside. And with that, basically have more women involved and have more legal people involved in the industry. The idea is also to create networking and building opportunities for more women, again, to make them stay, because after all, the retention is going to be a really key component of success, when it comes to the projects and the initiative, and I think also generally the environment, right? So the environment needs women. So I mean, it needs more talent.
Yeah, of course. And I guess next time somebody asks you that question, you can just tell that person that, yeah, the value you bring would be, to be a trailblazer, and you can bring, the obstacles in place, and you can bring more ladies into this space, right? Because how it feels like, and you see, yeah, the impediments, and you also see the issues with maybe for some reason guys are just more excited about it. I don't know. There's also the push. It's not only the blocking, right? Maybe there's also a pull factor that's different that it's hard to understand.
Yeah, true. For example, gamers are mostly men, right? Like, and many gamers move to,
But why?
to Web3, right?
That's also interesting, right? Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if I look with my male friends and my female friends, like I have a lot more gamer, male friends, right? I don't think I have like one female friend, like, who, for example, plays games. Like, I haven't played games. I think it's like, I think it's it has definitely to do something like, with bringing up as well, and with the interests, right? Like, and generally, when I assume, like, when you're kind of like, in one type of industry, right, you keep exploring it further. And generally, I think, like, like, society views women and men differently, and according to that, also, you get the like, bringing up from your parents, right? So I know I was like, they really tried to raise me as a girl, right? But they really failed, right?
Did they failed?
Oh yeah.
I think it's the ones they try hardest on where it fails, right?
Yeah, and like, I was like, in fact, right? Like, and I moved to tech industry, and in my tech startups, to be honest, like, it was really female dominated environment, I cannot say. But when I came to to blockchain industry, I was like, oh, hell no, right? Like, there was like no women. I went to the LLR summit, right? It was like, honestly, like a real sausage party. Like, it was crazy. Actually, no, I did this. No, honestly, I did. Like, there were like,
what's a sausage party? Can we define this?
Like 2,000 men and 5 girls. That's not good, right?
But if you take the cross section of finance in tech,
yeah,
sort of,
exactly, right? But that's why you need to bring more women. That's why you need to give them education on that, right? On that cross section, tell them, like, this environment is amazing, right? Like, so many great things you can do here, and why wouldn't you, right? But I think women feel a lot discouraged. Like, why I think that is, like, I kind of quite frequently give this example. So I was looking for some sort of like help with some organizational stuff within the org, right? So it clearly stated we are a DAO focused nonprofit, right? So I got around like 70 candidates or something, and out of them, I had like 15 women, right? So the rest were men, and I was like, and none of those women were actually in any of the similar niches that we would need, right? So I wanted to kind of like play a bit with it. So I reposted the same ad. I just added a sentence that advantages given to women, as our goal is to empower more women to move to Web3. So with that, I had 55 candidates, out of which like less than 20 were men, right? Yeah. So that sentence actually changed the amount of women that applied for the role. And it happens quite often that women don't feel that they can find themselves in the tech industry, again, because it's male dominated. And it's no one's fault, it's male dominated, it just is. But the fact is that there needs to be more education and more support towards women to get involved and actually stay in the industry. The fact is that when you have like a very male dominated like culture and workplace with a bro culture, like it's different, right? Like it gets harder to retain women, especially because there is also the pay gap, right? So it's a fact that in many places, women are paid less for the same job men do. And generally, I think like the culture and the mindset around like having women in workplaces and having women in tech industry has to change. Like honestly, like I'm not someone that I hate when someone says like, oh, women are better than men or the way around. Like that's complete BS, right? So that's what depends on like who's better than who depends on the skills, the knowledge, expertise one has, right? But what matters is to actually create an environment where the woman feels safe and empowered, and it's okay for you to be here, right? So you're not going to be looked at someone who is of less value, or someone who might not have any value to bring to the company, as this guy said, right? So I'm generally creating like a more women-friendly environment is what's gonna aid having more women involved and wanting to get involved. So the reasons behind it, again, like the lack of education, lack of access, and the retention gap, that like workplace culture are things that are just important to change, and so others feel enabled to come and say.
So that's what this project that you're working on, part of Waceo, is focusing on.
Yeah, so our focus is to give free access to free education on Web3, and generally introduce them to Web3 and introduce to network of other women that are already working in space, but also of course like to men, and to create like networking job opportunities, because it gets a lot easier to land a job Web3 if you understand what Web3 is about, right? And actually to introduce Web3
like with any other job.
Yeah, right. Like, but like exactly, right. But those women do not have those abilities, right? Like, and we generally intend to target regions that have probably had less opportunities to get that education, such as like Africa, Muslim women, Balkans, South America, and South Asia. So those are some of the regions that we'll be focusing on for the project.
Yeah, really cool. Maybe we can link to that. We can link to that project.
Sure.
In the show notes for all the women. I don't know. I mean, you probably have really bad luck with our YouTube channel, because I recently checked. It's like, I think 93% male listeners to our YouTube videos.
No,
So,
I think like men should be
But,
involved in the talks, right? Like,
Flo, I think, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to jump in because I realized that YouTube in general, right, has a much larger skew towards
it's probably
male
not representative,
viewers.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also something that a lot of people are trying to figure out, right? Like, you're showing videos. Why is it that more, like as a percentage, there are more guys watching YouTube than ladies, right? No, it's a
like I can't watch those long videos. It just doesn't grab my attention, right? Like I could be there like so many other, productive things I could be doing while, during the duration of that video. Like,
yeah.
Reels are the length of the videos I can handle. Right? And I know like many of my female friends feel the same way, right? Like, when you receive like a link to a 15-minute long video, like, hell, I'm not gonna watch that.
Yeah, I'm almost the
fun.
opposite. I'm like, oh man, this thing's only 4 minutes. There's no point.
Yeah.
There you go.
It'll be gone.
We
in
need
no
to make
time.
shorter videos, Flo. We need to make shorter videos, and we'll capture all the ladies.
Yeah, I mean, like Anya's been saying we should do TikTok, so maybe we should.
Yeah, maybe TikTok's the
Like-
way.
The really short
Yeah,
format.
I mean, it's just like if videos last for 15-20 minutes, you know how many things I can do during those 15-20 minutes, and just like
That's
You're
crazy.
saying the
look at
video
it.
doesn't have any value?
No, I'm not
you
saying
just
it doesn't.
prioritize.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't have any value, far from it, right? But I would just rather read.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Well, yeah,
So
yeah.
just like, I would like, reading it would take me like, shorter amount of time, right? So, and I could do other things after, right? But just like staring at something for like 20 minutes, like even if I watch like some YouTube videos that are related to DAOs, like decentralization and stuff, like things I like, right? So I have to chop it up because
Yeah.
like, even though the topic is extremely interesting, to me, it's just like, I could be doing so many other things, right? Like, while watching that video. So I would just rather go and read something online on that topic.
Yeah,
Now
right.
I know why I'm so unproductive, man. Just figured it out.
Oh,
Just
wow.
watching videos. all day
Thanks,
long.
Alexa. You've changed my life.
From now on. No more YouTube.
No, but how many guests have we had on the show? So in so far, is Alexa number
How many
3?
women? How many women did you
Oh, you're
have
definitely
here,
first.
huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
thank you.
first, but I think like one out of in the crypto
we had
space, you're like
4.
yeah, in the crypto space, you're like 1 in a million, but for Tokenomics DAO podcast, you're 1 out of 4. So our ratio is
Hey,
like
there you
way
go.
better.
It's really good. Yeah. We've got like 25% women.
Yeah, man. And Alexa, you want to come on next week?
I can talk to a friend, right? Like,
There
see
you go.
if she
Yeah.
would be up for it. So
Right,
you
so
can
with
up
us,
your
it's really
stats.
easy.
Yeah.
I can
No,
help
but,
you up your stats.
Honestly, like if there's anyone that you think of that has something interesting to say, please, right? Always open.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
And help up your stats of women involved.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Always interested in that.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else we want to mention? I think like we put all the links to the things that you mentioned. Maybe you can just send us that and we'll put it in the show
we'll do.
notes.
Yeah, sure, we'll do that.
Any final thoughts you want to bring up?
No, are you gonna make reels out of this so my female friends can also watch?
Good idea, man. Maybe that's
Yeah,
that's
for
something we
sure.
have to look at.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
We should get the head of TikTok going to turn it into like tiny little clips. You don't know,
No,
right? I've got no idea.
Yeah,
But
it might-
we
it
also
might- it
write,
might
right? You can
work.
check out our
Yeah.
Substack. So
Okay.
there's lots of articles out there that you can read if you prefer that. But hey, yeah.
But this is quite interesting, right? Like one woman, 2 men, and like watching YouTube videos, right? Like, so funny, like easy example of how differently, we do things, right? And the gaming,
Yeah.
right? Like, are you guys into games?
Yeah.
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 Very true. Yeah.
That's like, I think I played like 2 or 3 games in my life. One being Sims, the other being Mortal Kombat, and third one Need for Speed.
Whoa, she likes fast cars. She likes to smash people up. And then which Sims are you talking about? The one where you keep the house real
Build
nice
houses.
and tidy?
Yeah, like, like you build big houses and stuff,
I think
right?
it's more the
So
building aspect. Yeah.
yes, exactly. I had huge neighborhoods and huge houses, and then I would just like drown everyone in the pool.
Jeez.
That's
Should
what
we?
they all do, yeah.
Well, this podcast is taking like a really deep, dark turn.
Towards the
Yeah,
end
but I
is where
think
it gets interesting. Yeah. So you really got to watch more than 4 minutes of this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You made it
Bits
until
at the
here.
end.
Yeah.
All right. So should we call it a day? I would love to hear back from you once the tokens launched and you feel like you want to give us an update. We'd love to hear
Yeah,
how
sure.
the swaps are working and how many DAOs you're working with, how the Shield Up program's going.
How your
Yeah, sure, would love
tokenomics
that.
panned out once it was launched is also something we're also really interested in.
Okay, go into that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good. Okay, great.
Hey, thanks for
So
coming on.
yeah, it was great. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
This podcast was not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly educational and is not investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice. Talk to your accountant, do your own research. None of this is legal advice. This podcast is strictly educational. Talk to your lawyer.